All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Say It Your Way Part 2. Whoop, whoop, with the write-up and all of us gang. Here we are.
Yes, it's going to be a great night. I can't wait to dive into this because paraphrasing and summarizing, there's a lot to it. So, last week we went through some of the strategies. We've got more to share with you tonight so that you can continue to grow your students' skill sets to really say it in their own words, say it their own way.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's dive in. Oh, before we do, Tabitha, you want to share on this?
Yes. I did post this on our socials yesterday, but just a reminder, we do have our back to school writing contest. This is for all grades, and there is a cash prize. And so there's 3 different grade bands, and teachers, if your student enters this and wins, you also win. So really encourage those kiddos to enter this. This is all about me, but your students, all about them, all about you.
All about them. There you go.
Not all about me. Your students don't know about me. But this is a really great. We talked about the some of these prompts a couple weeks ago. These are really great back to school prompts, and I know some schools are literally like, I have a friend in New York. They are starting school tomorrow, so this is the perfect time to do a low risk, low anxiety writing prompt, because I know poetry can kind of sound scary, but honestly, poetry gives kids so much freedom, and it really does take away that stress of I don't know what to write. And all 3 of these have pretty good frames for the students to work with. So this is a really great way to get your kids back into writing and maybe earn a little cashish.
Yeah, I love it. Yes. So deadline is the 20th. Can't wait to see your entries. You can enter all of your students. You could just have a few, but we just can't wait to see all the entries coming in for our 3 contests. All right. And it wouldn't be a session on paraphrasing if we didn't bring back our poison bottle because this is just such a powerful way of thinking about what paraphrasing is. It truly is that antidote to plagiarism. And that's really becoming more and more of an issue, right? Just as students are doing more on computers, copying and pasting is so easy. And we want to make sure that they don't get into the habit of just clicking and highlighting and moving text over. And then certainly with AI, right? That is a whole nother level of learning how to utilize a tool that isn't going to take the thought out of the learning that you all as teachers are so carefully designing for them. And so that's where paraphrasing really can come into play. It really makes sure that we are not shortcutting their true learning, their true understanding. So let's dive into more of our strategies tonight.
Yeah.
So, actually last week, I know I have this in here. I was like, gosh, that was from last week too. So, last week we talked a lot about the differences between paraphrasing and summarizing because these terms are kind of thrown around together or kind of intermingled, and they do share a lot of the same strategies. Even when we get into our strategies tonight, they are for paraphrasing and summarizing. But one thing that's so critical for you all as you are designing prompts for students, as you're thinking about why am I having them put things in their own words, is what's the end goal? And that's where you determine if you're paraphrasing or if you're summarizing. And so we had all these great analogies last week. So the first 3 that you see for paraphrasing and summarizing, they are identical, right? We're talking about building a cake through all the ingredients coming together for paraphrasing, and then taking a cake and shrinking it to a cupcake to have an analogy for summarizing. So the first 3 are kind of the 3, the same 3 topics, and then the rest of them are just better to kind of fit for the different strategies here. But you need to think about what your goal is. Do you want students to take, a pile of laundry, so to speak, and make folded clothes out of it? Or do you want them to take a pile of laundry and then highlight one outfit, right? That's the decision that you have to make as a teacher. All right, so we have 3 more strategies coming in to share tonight. Last week we shared about keeping, which is just which words are okay to use, rephrasing, which is about pulling in synonyms, and certainly at the word level, but as we'll show you even more tonight, we want to do entire sections and sentences. Restructuring too is one where we had arrows and we talked about kind of going from one section to another. And then the 3 tonight that we want to bring into the repertoire of strategies is to combine. So looking across several sentences or several sections and pulling all that together into sentences that really makes students work their own. That's a huge piece of paraphrasing and summarizing. Categorizing, identifying bigger categories of information. What can we kind of group all this information and kind of generalize it with a certain term or a phrase. And then lastly, my favorite one, which is to pull in direct quotations. And we love to do that at the phrase level, not the whole sentence or longer level, especially for paraphrasing, because that is a way that students are really showing that they can weave in their words with the author's original words. And so you're seeing also the annotation pop up. We underline to combine, we create a classifying design to categorize, and we bracket or highlight for our quotes. And there's one little asterisk on that, and that's because this is the only strategy that's specific to paraphrasing. It's exclusive to paraphrasing. The rest, the 1 through 5, and then also 7 and 8 are for both paraphrasing and summarizing. But number 6, quoting, we never want to see a quote in a summary. That is just part of the technical definition of a summary. So important to make sure you share that with your students. All right. So we're going to dive in. Megan, do you want to read the text and then I can talk about the strategies that come in? This is our
Absolutely.
very edge of your seat, suspenseful story about who has eggs. So let's pick up with the text and see who has eggs.
I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna spoil something for you guys right now. The beef dogs do not have
Okay. The horse has no eggs.
Oh no, it's not the horse. Yeah, so remembering back, we only have 5 for our youngest writers. We're talking our kinder and our first grade students here. And so what we're seeing are you see the same 5 that we had on the screen with all 8. But what we're going to do here is just walk through those same strategies that we did last week of which words can we keep. Remember, we talked about nouns and numbers. So horse and eggs will be words we can keep. Rephrase, well, we're going to take the has, no in this case and think about does not make, does not lay. So it's, this is the part of rephrasing that's not word for word. We have to look at phrases and think about what are we saying here? That a horse does not make eggs, a horse does not lay eggs. Okay, that all makes sense. And then we're going to restructure. We're going to flip the way that we put this sentence together of looking at eggs being the start of our sentence instead of horse. And so this is, just at the one sentence level, showing how you can get even our youngest writers, or let's say we're working with newcomers at the high school level, this would be a text that would be an accessible language text for them. And then they can still work on this thinking skill of how do I kind of restructure, reorganize the way that my sentence is coming together. So it could be something like eggs are not made by horses. So it pulls in those 3 strategies. Yes, there's more that we ultimately want students to learn how to do with paraphrasing. But if you think about where do I start, where do I begin with students? A, we need very accessible sentences, and B, we need to not paraphrase in a way that sounds so drastically different that they think there was some kind of magic machine as part of the process. They need to be able to see every piece of it come into play.
The goat has no eggs.
Oh no. Look at him. He even looks sad about it.
Very derpy little goat there.
Right?
So sad.
So going fast forward through these, we've got our paraphrase content just looking at eggs are not made by goats, because what I want to get to here is looking at combining, looking at strategy 4. So there are the 2 sentences. We repeated the same structure like we did last week about our beef dogs and pigs. I guess I don't know what, you'll have to come up with something.
Those are curly porks.
Okay, our beef dogs and our curly porks. So yeah, we will come back to those pages in a minute, but just like we did last week with those two pages, we had we looked at them kind of side by side. We're going to do that again here, we repeated the same structure, is what I'm trying to say, on those two pages last week. We're repeating the same structure here. Eggs are not made by horses. Eggs are not made by goats. And now what we want to do is look at how can we combine this content. So we're wanting students to see, oh, there's a connection here. Horses and goats, right? They neither one are making those eggs. So we're going to underline that whole first sentence because that's the concept. Eggs are not made by horses. And then what do we want to combine that with from the second sentence? Well, it's really the word goats, right? Because we're taking that concept of not making eggs, and then we want to make sure we mention both animals. So that's at its simplest form what strategy 4 means, to combine. And so I love this, especially for our youngest writers, for our striving readers and writers, for our multilingual students, to give them those sentence frames to help them articulate and experiment with their paraphrase content. So Megan, you want to read those two so we can hear what they sound like with the content in them?
Yes, eggs are not made by horses or goats. Horses and goats do not make eggs.
Okay, there you go. In case you were still wondering, we have definitely cleared this up. Okay, and students love practicing this, and that's something that, just as Megan just exemplified, reading it out loud, that's so important for students to do, whether it's choral, whether it's in small groups, just practicing saying the same thing in different ways. So now let's go back to, what were they again, Tabitha? What are our two animals?
Beef dog and curly porks. I feel like I'm running like a diner in the middle of like nowhere, right? Like on Route 66, and I'm like, give me a beef dog and a curly pork.
There you go. I love it. So we're gonna do the same thing here. So what do we think should be combined from these two sentences? Cows do not lay eggs. Pigs do not lay eggs. What do we need to combine here?
We have the do not lay eggs twice. So we just need our beef dogs and our curly porks.
That's right. Beef dogs and curly porks. There we go. So yeah, that's exactly it. And what we love to provide are these patterned texts for students to practice. So not patterned to just make it easy, but we're patterning different things. Was that? Yeah, I think I said that right. We're using patterns in very intentional ways here. And so, yeah, we've got the two different paraphrase sentence frames that we can use for this this content as well. You want to read them, Megan, so we can hear what they sound like?
Okay, I would love to. So cows and pigs do not lay eggs. Cows nor pigs lay eggs.
Can I also say that beef dogs nor curly porks lay eggs?
There you go. I mean, we really should revamp this with the keep, and we need to change out the cows and pigs too.
Yes.
Okay, more to the story. It's still not over.
The sheep has no eggs.
What?
The furry, I don't know.
The donkey.
This is why these are not good synonyms, because there aren't other words for these.
Right? Yes.
That's right. My creativity is down right now, y'all.
Yes, and then the donkey, as you said, Megan, has no eggs too. So who has eggs? Oh, goodness.
The red hen has eggs.
Oh, there it is. So you can repeat all the strategies we've just talked through with each of these pages. But what I want to get to now is strategy 5, because you know those 4 well. You can obviously apply those to each of the ones that we just ran through quickly with the sheep and the donkey and the red hen. But let's talk about categorizing. What do we do here with categorizing? And so this is a little bit of a taste of summarizing, which I love. So combining and categorizing are summarizing elements, right? They're parts of that more than the other ones. So that's a really neat way of kind of seeing that there are elements of summarizing inside paraphrasing. So again, like there's a lot of connection between these two, but you all have to decide, what is the end goal that I want my students to do? Is it to mix it up and tell me about everything they just read? Or is it to really shrink it down and give me just a quick synopsis, a little raisin, right, of the entire piece? So categorizing can look like this, where you use a brainstorming design or a classifying design. So in this case, we did brainstorming here, where we're going to pop up all of the animals and ask the question, what goes in the box that connects all of this information? So we've got the cows and the horse and the donkey and the sheep, right? They're all there. They are all
Farm animals.
Farm animals. Yes, they are. They're all farm animals. And that is a big category that we can say. But if we took our hen out, because if we think about all the pages of the book, the red hen page was the only one that said she lays eggs, right? All the others do not have or make or produce eggs. So now what does our center box, our topic box, our category box become?
Farm animals that do not lay eggs.
Boom. There we go. Farm animals that do not lay eggs. And that's really starting to get down to what are the categories and the main categories that I want to make sure I pull into my paraphrase and or my summary. So here is, in this case, a summarized content, because we are shrinking it down to the smallest little bit. Most farm animals do not lay eggs. And how did we come up with the word most? Well, we're looking at what? We have 7 bubbles there, and only 1 got crossed out in terms of farm animals that do not lay eggs. So we can say most farm animals do not lay eggs. However, hens lay eggs. So we've got this great quick little summary of our story of who has eggs. And now we can all go to sleep tonight knowing who has eggs.
Isn't there a type of snake that lays eggs?
I think all.
Yeah, all snakes lay eggs. Reptiles lay eggs.
Okay, maybe I should have rephrased it. I think there is a type of snake that does not lay eggs. Let me say that, because I saw a video on TikTok of a snake giving birth. It was like a whole thing, but
okay,
someone's gonna prove me wrong about that. And maybe it was like an AI video.
Hey, I think it's fascinating. We should learn about it, and then prove us right, prove us wrong, and maybe we can add to our story. That snakes.
Yes.
All right. So that's from the lower grade levels, right? That's the K and first example there. And then this book, The Eyes of Animals, is one that we wrote for more middle elementary, upper elementary, and into to middle school. And we're just going to pick right up with it. So we talked about, we did owls last week. And so this is the 3rd page of the book, or second page of text, but 3rd page of the actual book about eagles. And so I want to just quickly go through, let's see, here we go. We get it all popped up here. All right. Yeah, there we go.
Can I just tell you guys something really fast?
Yes.
70% of snakes lay eggs.
Oh.
The remaining 30% are viviparous, which means they give live birth, or ovoviparous, which is they give birth to young after the eggs have hatched inside of them.
Oh, wow.
So learn something new every day.
Yeah, no doubt. That's wild.
Okay, sorry. Back to eagles.
Who knew? That's incredible. All right. So you knew. Let's just check that out.
I had to look it up right now because I was like, I need to know. I'm gonna forget later.
I love it. So here you have the first 2 strategies exemplified. We did this last week on owls. Here it is again on eagles. Keep strategy is which words are okay to pull in. Those are all the nouns usually. Rephrase would be a lot of adjectives and verbs, and then also bigger phrases like the can see small objects from very far away. And we've got a couple things like, what does that mean, right? If you can see small objects from very far away, what does that mean? Well, it means you got clear eyesight. It means you got keen eyesight, right?
Well, so I think, sorry, this is one of those examples, and you were talking about this last week about how when you have your students phrase this as keen eyesight, they're actually like going above and beyond what the text is saying. And so your students are actually wording this in a better way than the book is wording it, right? Because they're reaching those like really specific academic vocabulary words, which is really cool when your students know they have the ability to do that.
Yeah, and that's a great point too, because if you look at like the synonyms for small objects, one of them is tiny prey, and like, nothing in the text makes you think, oh, they're talking about prey. But
Mhm.
that can come from doing additional research. So if I put up this slide here, this is actually a quick little this was done from just a Google search in a classroom where students just said, okay, what are the tiny or the small objects that eagles look for, right? And this was the very first source that pulled up. It's a Moment of Science, which I love that name, from
Great.
Indiana Public Media. Yeah, well done, Indiana. And then look at that very first sentence that circled. An eagle circling 300 feet in the air looks to us like a dot in the sky. But even from that height, the eagle is scanning the ground for prey. And that really helps students think about, okay, can I pull in my background knowledge? I'm hitting the buttons too fast. Can I pull in background knowledge to my paraphrase? And that's where you can think about, okay, what is the task that I'm giving students? If it's to paraphrase the article, then you do need to be cautious about incorporating background knowledge or outside sources. Just check on it, right? The reason I use the word cautious is not to say it's off limits, but you just want to make sure you're not introducing too much extra information. If your task was paraphrase the book The Eyes of Animals, right? If the task was to paraphrase the content, which is oftentimes what really we're asking students to do, is like, tell us what you learned. What did you glean from what you just read, right? We're not looking for like a true like literary kind of analysis level paraphrase. Then it's really okay as long as the information clarifies the concept and it adds relevant information. So I love this little kind of if then check here for you and for your students to think through. Can I bring in outside research? Can I bring in background knowledge to help with my paraphrase? So let's get all this back up here. And then to combine, we're doing this just through the 3 sentences: eagles, see small objects, and color. And what I love about this is that it's challenging students to, yes, use 2 words that are keep words, right? Eagles and color should come into this this combined content, no problem. But see small objects, those are also words that we rephrased. So they should very easily be able to look at these different brainstorming designs and say, oh, I need to use identify or spot or perceive or view. And then also think about small objects, right? And in this case, going more specific to things like, or to the scientific term of tiny prey. So Megan, do you want to speak to some of these strategies with your students, with SPED students in high school?
Yes. So I just did this activity with my SPED high schoolers yesterday. Actually, we read a Newsella article about a famous TikToker who was featured on Chopped, One Chopped, and spreads a lot of information about eating healthy and also Ramadan and his cultural traditions and things. And one thing that I loved doing with my students is, one, they are still very much like, what is the words that we're trying to keep? What are those nouns? What are those proper nouns? And why do we want to use them? And so, for example, I had a student who started his summary with, he has a lot of TikTok followers. And I was immediately like, whoa. If I've never read the article, who is he? Where was that proper noun that you highlighted? And he immediately was like, oh my goodness, his name. Yes. Okay. I'll put his, and so he's erasing and putting his name in and things like that. One of the other things that I really loved that I wasn't expecting, and Amber kind of mentioned this, of students bringing in their background knowledge, but also I had a student in the article, they were talking about how the TikToker's mom was really influential and shared her recipes and shared her love of cooking with him. And a student kind of really attached to that. And so as he was writing about this TikToker, he was like, I relate because my mom also teaches me recipes and also, loves to share in cooking with me. And so I thought that was really beautiful that he was pairing in some of his own life experiences and relating to this TikToker through the summary and through these key details that we were picking out in order to write our summaries. So I thought that was really beautiful as well.
Yeah, and that goes back to the very first thing that we talked about, that paraphrasing is the antidote to circumventing students' learning, right? We want to make sure that by putting it in their own words, they are really learning the content. And what you just shared, it really exemplifies that for all different levels of learners, all different ages of learners. And so I just love that. Thanks for sharing all that.
I want to add something to that too. Megan, you said something about like when he mentioned because a really great check for understanding is when you're having students summarize and paraphrase, like telling them, if someone were to read this that's never heard of this before, are they going to understand what you're saying? Because all paraphrasing and summarizing should be done in such a way that a third party is coming in and they're reading it and able to understand it.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
And that was a great check for him as well. Like, I love being able to have students write what they're, you know, after we do all of this and they're writing what their summary or paraphrase is, but then they can immediately get that good feedback and that check and be able to self-correct themselves. Like, if I hadn't read the article, you're starting with he, does that make sense? And then immediately that student realized, oh no, I should absolutely use their proper noun and use their name, so that way you know who I'm talking about. And so it was a really great student self-check that, you know, hopefully he'll remember for the next time we do it.
Love it.
You guys, Nixie came by. She needs to say hi because she heard us talking about all the animals. She said, I'm an animal, but I don't lay eggs. Huh.
I don't lay eggs. Nixie doesn't lay eggs.
Oh, more suspenseful pages to add. Yeah. So the last thing on here about the eagle is just showing how we're pulling from all of the different bubbles and boxes to come up with paraphrase content. And that's the beauty of going slow through these strategies to then give students all the pieces that they need, all the tools, all the options that they need. Yes, Nixie, I know it's so true, to put their paraphrases together, right? So that you can see in that sentence, since they have keen eyesight, where did we get keen eyesight? Straight from our synonym work. And perceive the world in color, right? That came from our combining work. Eagles can quickly spot tiny prey to catch. So all of that is coming from our from all of the strategies that we walked through. And I love to do this on screens in classrooms or on boards, and then watch students come up and just look at their eyes and watch where they go across the screen, where they're like, okay, I'm going to grab a little from there, and I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to grab this part. And you can just see all their little synapses firing in their brain while they are putting together their sentence. So I love to watch that active learning in classrooms when everything is laid out so explicitly like this. So let's talk about macaws. This page says macaws can see more colors than people can. They also have incredible depth perception, which means they are very good at knowing how far away something is from them. And as we take a look at this, I'm just going to go kind of quickly through it. You are seeing all of the strategies pop up again. Keep and rephrase, the first two. Lots of things to work through to keep, and then certainly a lot to rephrase. And and then there was a paraphrase content below. But where I want to go right now is getting to a new strategy, which is that categorize one. So we've just read 3 pages about animals and their eyesight. We read about owls, we read about eagles, and we just read about macaws. And this is where we can start to have students say, wait a second, I am noticing a bigger category. I see how these 3 are all related. And so if I lay them out this way in a classifying design, we want to ask students, okay, we've got these 3 branches, eagles, macaws, and owls. What goes at the top? They're all birds, right? So we're making those larger categories of grouping the information together to be able to share some of the paraphrased information. So that's what this next slide is showing is, okay, we've got the big concept of that eagles, macaws, and owls are all birds. So we can make some statements about birds. And then what you're seeing pop in down the bottom are they are the 3 paraphrase sections. So what we wrote about eagles is that they have keen eyesight, perceive the world in color, quickly spot their tiny prey. Owls see in grayscale. That actually makes them stellar nocturnal hunters. And the macaws view their surroundings in even more vivid colors than humans. With phenomenal depth perception, they are talented at determining the distance between an object and them. Okay, so we've got the 3 paraphrase sentences that we have, and so we want to think about like what can I bring together from all of that? I can't say that all birds see in color, right? Because we've got owls thrown in there. Can I say that they all have great depth perception? Well, I don't know. There's not enough here to be able to make that kind of level of generalization. So here's an example of where we've got kind of a larger category of information, like many birds have incredible eyesight. That's something that we can see across all 3 of these, that the eagles have keen eyesight, the owls are stellar nocturnal hunters, and the macaws have this really incredible depth perception. So that means they all have great or incredible eyesight, just in different ways. And then the next sentence, some see in color like eagles and macaws, while others like owls only see in grayscale. So we're kind of categorizing in that case all about color, right? We're saying, okay, what can we now share about color when it comes to eyesight? So the categories kind of keep going in the work that you're doing when you pull in that strategy. It's not just like the big category that all the topics fit in. It's, okay, what were other smaller categories within the content that we can pull out and write about as well. And so here is another example of kind of saying, all right, I'm going to cluster all this information. Eagles, owls, and macaws view the world differently to help them survive in their environment. And then we could follow up with that paraphrase sentence about each bird that we have in the branches below. So the categorizing strategy, yes, is for paraphrasing, and it also quickly gets students to doing summarizing as well. And they sometimes don't even realize it, right? It doesn't feel hard to do this kind of connective work. So love this strategy to get students to bring in more connections and really kind of be in both of those strategies, right? Both of those goals of paraphrasing and summarizing. Okay, let's talk about bees. Megan, you want to read this page?
Yep. Bees have 5 eyes. Their 2 large eyes are made up of thousands of tiny eyes. They also have 3 small eyes that help them tell how bright or dark things are.
Okay, I love that picture of them too. So here it all pops up. You see numbers, you see nouns for number 1, you see adjectives and verb phrases coming in for strategy 2. I love this though. Look at that whole sentence. Their 2 large eyes are made up of thousands of tiny eyes. How can we paraphrase that? And this is where academic vocabulary, where content learning comes into play, because if they're learning about eyes and they're learning about the eyes of insects, there is a specific name for these eyes where there are thousands of little eyes. And so we would want students to definitely be able to come up with something like, oh, yeah, that sentence, that's compound eyes. That's what they're describing. They just didn't use that technical term in this particular text. So back to Tabitha's point, that's so important to make sure that students are constantly refining their language through their paraphrasing and summarizing work. All right, a little bit more here. So, you really see that strategies 1 and 2 do about 80% of the paraphrasing and summarizing work. And that's just the way that this type of writing, this type of thinking really what it requires, right? And
like, because my students are brand new to this, and even though I've been teaching this for a few years, but they're new to it, like I did the first 2 steps for them to write their paraphrase and summaries this time, and I'm kind of like melding them into it. So the next time we do it, we'll introduce another step. And then the next time we'll introduce another step. And then we'll paraphrase and bring in that direct quote and things like that. But using those first 2 steps as the beginning of welcome to this strategy is really, really helpful in a very like non-overwhelming way for students when they're first being introduced to it.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, and also doing bite-sized amounts of text, right? We don't want to start off by paraphrasing a whole article, right? We had another colleague reach out today to say, some of her students are coming to her saying, I'm supposed to paraphrase this whole letter, primary source, and I'm overwhelmed, right? So it's saying, okay, let's just take a few sentences. Let's just take that first paragraph and work on the strategies at much more digestible amounts of text. Because if they can't do it well there, they're not going to do it for the entire source. And that's okay. No matter your grade level, make the activity accessible and doable for students, because they've got to learn it here before they can apply it to full-on articles, right? I wish we could make it a much faster to the endpoint process, but we can't skip over these steps. And I'm so glad to hear, Megan, that you are taking your time on that and really building their confidence with these strategies. So let's talk strategy 6 for a second. Quote, what phrase could we incorporate in? And I love this as a challenge for students to say, you look through this and what do you think the author said best? What do you feel like that you could not say it any better than the way that the source has it? And that really opens up the personal preference, right? The students can say, oh, I really liked this phrase. And others might say, oh, really? Like I thought of 10 ways to rephrase that, but I liked this phrase. And it just individualizes and personalizes the paraphrasing process. Because remember, this is a strategy that cannot be used in summarizing. Okay. So we do not quote in summarizing. So for this one, for me personally, it's this: made up of thousands of tiny eyes. Even though we did this for our keep strategy and our rephrase strategy, I still love it for this strategy here.
Well, and that goes to show like the number, right? Because the number is right. It's hard to find a synonym for a number without saying, well, I mean, there's just no other way to say thousands without saying thousands.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it shows just, sometimes if there's a lot of things that are kept right in a certain area, that might be a good indicator that it could be a great phrase, right? We didn't highlight eyes there because it's highlighted somewhere else, but that's another part of it. So yeah, it just is something that as a writer, I would love to include that in, as well as what we did for the rephrase. So this is just where we're layering on those strategies. You're getting students to keep thinking about the topic from lots of different angles and deepening their understanding of ultimately what they're learning, right? They are learning about how animals see, and they're going to better understand how bees see because of going through multiple strategies. So what could our paraphrase end up sounding like? Something like this: bees see with 2 giant compound eyes, each made up of thousands of tiny eyes, and 3 little light sensing eyes. So I love that it's got 1 and 2 and 6 all kind of intermingled throughout that sentence. Okay, we are going to pause on this and come back next week to dive into Langston Hughes' short story, Thank You, Ma'am. It's a favorite of all of ours, and we want to show you all of the strategies at play here. And so I want to go.
Well, and you were just talking about, you just said a word. Basically just like looking at things from different angles. Yeah. And so when we do this, we're definitely going to show you a different angle, because it really even stretched my brain today as I was working on it. So we're going to be looking at that story, not in a way that you would expect, right? Like you're expecting us to paraphrase and summarize the story, but we're actually going to be doing a character analysis through the paraphrasing and summarize strategy. And like I said, it stretched my brain, but it was really good because we need to stretch our brains, right?
Yeah.
And so we'll be excited to share that strategy with you next week and how you can do paraphrasing and summarizing in unique and kind of offbeat ways.
Yes. And so just to circle back to the research to finish out tonight, there's so much about the power of paraphrasing. And I think Megan really legitimized all of this with what she shared about her students. But really that active processing and comprehension is so critical and important. It improves memory and recall, right? Like students are not realizing how much they're in the text over and over as they're paraphrasing and working on summaries. And it just makes them reread without those alarms of rereading going off in their head. So you all want to talk about either one of these?
Go for it, Tab.
Oh, I see Graham's name on here.
Oh, I can't believe I gave you this
I
page
told
again.
Amber last week that I was going to make a bingo card of every week that we say.
I think his name has made it into every single episode. So,
I mean, writing development pretty much really like speaks for itself, right? For having ways that students develop their writing and in paraphrasing and summarizing. But I really love this term up here with metacognition, not that so much self-monitoring, because it is really important for students to be able to put things in their own words for comprehension purposes, but it is a writing skill. And Amber, you said something at the beginning and it made me think of a student that I had once that actually plagiarized an idea. He wrote a story based off of a movie that he saw, and he was like, you can't plagiarize that. Like, I didn't copy it word for word. And I was like, but it's literally the same idea. And also, if you are going to like plagiarize Bruce Almighty, you literally can't say like Morgan Freeman as God said, Bruce. And I was like, it's plagiarism. But it's important for those big ideas too. It's so important for our students to learn paraphrasing as a self-monitoring and a self-check. Have they learned something from this?
Yeah.
And are they able to tell you in their own words?
Yeah. And, I am remiss to not have Karen Harris's name up there with self-monitoring. That's Graham's wife, and she is a huge proponent of having students self-monitor through their writing process. So that is on me to fix that. But you're absolutely right. The metacognition and self-monitoring and writing just really all go together. And then the last one is the content learning. So we really touched on all these. I just love all these little bits of affirmations that come from science of reading world, because we want to show you that there's power in what we as educators know makes a difference with students day in and day out in the classroom. There's so much research and just tests that have been done, trials that have been done that have shown the positive impact of these really hard strategies, right? Paraphrasing and summarizing are not easy ways to think or to process information, but they are some of the best. And it really is summed up here. So Megan, you started us off. You get to have the last word here.
Woohoo! All right. Paraphrasing isn't just a writing skill. It's a powerful cognitive strategy that research has repeatedly linked to deeper comprehension, memory, and learning. And may I just say that writing and these strategies is not an ELA thing. It is an
Amen, sister.
I was literally just about to say, I've had more conversations this week with friends of mine, if you know, you know, about the fact that there's this stigma around the fact that writing is only an ELA subject. And it's not, because it is happening in maybe not math so much, but it is happening in every subject. It should be happening in every subject.
Yeah. I mean, even explaining your thinking of how you solved math problems. What's the process that you use? I mean, even my own son said, when she asks me how I got my answer, I just say, I don't know. I thought about it. And I'm like, well, she's wanting you to be able to articulate what you were thinking about. Like, what were the specific numbers in your head? What operation? What order did you do? How did you represent the unknown, right? So getting him to think through all of those pieces is very much paraphrasing strategies in the math world. So it goes across every type of thinking, or sorry, every type of content, I want to say, and every class. We really want students to be able to be that active and deep thinker, no matter what they're learning. So, all right,
and they'll remember it. They're gonna
remember it. Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining in tonight and learning more of our strategies for paraphrasing and summarizing. We love that it's really breaking down something that's complex and daunting for teachers and students into very manageable step-by-step strategies that you can walk students through as slow as you need to make sure they're learning it. And then they're going to be able to speed up and just wow you every time you ask them to say it in their own words. So until next week, have a fabulous week of writing and thinking and learning, and enjoy your long weekend for those of you off on Labor Day, and we'll see you next week.